Samuel Grant, a self-made millionaire who has everything money can buy but faces an empty future. With no family or heir, Samuel sets out on an unusual journey, leaving behind his fortune and walking the streets disguised as a simple man. He's searching for someone deserving, someone who values kindness over riches to inherit his legacy. But in the course of his search, Samuel meets a young boy named Eli who, with a single act of bravery, changes his life forever. As Samuel's health begins to fail, he must make a series of impossible choices, confronting the reality of his life and his need to leave a lasting impact. The journey that follows will take him through trials, revelations, and ultimately, the discovery of a family he never knew he had. What happens when Samuel's path intersects with a secret from his past? And how does he manage to leave a legacy that lives on far beyond his lifetime? If you enjoy heartwarming stories of love, redemption, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what you would do in Samuel's shoes. Let us know in the comments and stay tuned as we unravel the legacy of Samuel Grant. Now let's dive into the story. Samuel Grant had always prided himself on control. In his world of towering office buildings, high-stakes boardrooms, and sprawling estates, every decision was his. There was nothing, no deal, no handshake, no glance that didn't go his way. And yet, here he was sitting in a doctor's office with all that power slipping through his fingers. The office was stark, lined with textbooks and medical certificates in polished frames, but today it felt cold, sterile. Samuel's hand clenched the leather armrests as he waited for Dr. Marcus Foster, his trusted friend and physician of 2 decades. He'd come to Marcus as a favor, a quick checkup to ease his back pain. Yet, here he was, his pulse hammering in his chest as Marcus held a folder tightly, his face drawn with an expression Samuel had never seen before. "Sam," Marcus began, his voice weighed down with an unfamiliar heaviness. "I've gone over the test results twice. I'm sorry to tell you this, but we found cancer aggressive and advanced." Samuel's gaze faltered. For years, he believed he was invincible, his health an unbreakable force. In his mind, he saw his empire built on endless hours, sleepless nights, and a single-minded pursuit of success. He thought of the cold corridors of his mansion, his sprawling estate filled with silent rooms and empty halls. Dr. Foster's voice was softer now, pulling him back. "There's still treatment, of course, with aggressive chemotherapy and possibly surgery." But Samuel was barely listening. He knew enough about life to recognize when the odds were stacked against him. He didn't want to spend his remaining days in hospital beds, clinging to a few more months out of sheer fear. He raised a hand, stopping Marcus mid-sentence. "Marcus," he said, his voice as steady as he could make it, "I don't have time for treatments that offer no guarantees." Marcus sighed, setting down the file. "Sam, don't do this. You could still have years, good years if you fight." "Years for what?" Samuel replied, almost to himself. His life had been full of deals, contracts, and wealth beyond imagination, but it felt hollow now, like an empire built on sand. He'd always believed his legacy would be his company, his properties, his investments. But now, facing the possibility of no tomorrow, he saw it all differently. What good was wealth without anyone to pass it on to? Without a name, a face, a child to take the reins? Samuel's fingers trembled as he clasped his hands. "What would I be holding on to, Marcus? I have no family, no one to carry on the life I've built. What's the point of a legacy if there's no one to inherit it?" Marcus's eyes softened. He'd known Samuel since their college days, seen him rise from a small-town kid with a chip on his shoulder to the powerful figure he was now. But behind the success, he knew the truth. Samuel was alone. Every close relationship had been sacrificed along the way. After a moment of silence, Marcus spoke again. "Sam, I know your heart is in finding something meaningful, but don't let that drive you to make hasty decisions." But Samuel had already made up his mind. He stood, giving Marcus a nod of farewell. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything. I'll be in touch." With that, he walked out of the office, the weight of finality heavy on his shoulders. Samuel returned to his mansion that evening, feeling the vastness of it in a way he never had before. The grand entryway, with its gleaming marble floors and towering ceilings, felt lifeless, like an elaborate stage set with no actors. His footsteps echoed as he made his way through the darkened rooms, each one immaculate and perfect, yet utterly devoid of warmth. He wandered through the living room, past walls adorned with art from his global travels, portraits of landscapes he'd barely taken time to admire. In the dining room, a long, polished table stretched before him, large enough to seat a dozen guests, but it hadn't held so much as a single guest in years. Samuel stopped in front of the mantel, where a lone photograph sat, a faded picture of his parents on their wedding day. They had been his biggest supporters, his truest friends, the kind of people who valued family above all else. He'd promised his mother, years ago, that he'd carry forward their values, but in his pursuit of success, he'd lost sight of those promises. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the frame, as if hoping to feel their presence. "What would you think of me now, Dad?" he murmured, his voice catching in his throat. His father, a man who had never amassed much in the way of money, but who had lived a life filled with purpose and integrity, had once told him that real wealth was found in the people who loved you. Samuel had brushed it off, seeing it as sentimental nonsense. But now, staring at the empty halls of his grand home, he felt the truth of those words more deeply than ever. As the days passed, Samuel's mind grew restless, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He spent his mornings pacing through the mansion, walking from room to room, contemplating the emptiness that seemed to grow with each step. He could feel his time slipping away, like sand through an hourglass, and the urgency gnawed at him, pushing him to find a solution. He considered leaving everything to charity. Perhaps that would be a noble legacy, one that would honor his parents' values. But something inside him resisted the idea. He didn't want his life's work to end up as just another name on a plaque, another faceless donor lost in the pages of a charity's annual report. No, he wanted something more personal, someone who would carry forward his values, his vision, his drive, someone who could continue his work with the same passion and intensity that he had. But how to find such a person? One evening, as he sat alone in his study, an idea came to him, an idea that was as reckless as it was compelling. What if he left behind the trappings of wealth and privilege, became someone else, and searched for an heir in the unlikeliest of places? He'd heard of others who'd done it, wealthy people who had gone undercover to experience the world through new eyes. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. If he wanted to find someone worthy of his legacy, he needed to see beyond wealth and appearances. He needed to find someone who would value kindness, resilience, and integrity over material possessions. Perhaps, among the people who had little, he would find someone who truly appreciated the value of a life well lived. As the idea took shape, Samuel felt a strange exhilaration, a spark of purpose that he hadn't felt in years. He would go out into the world, disguised as an ordinary man, and he would search for someone who could see beyond his poverty and find worth in the person he truly was. The decision filled him with a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that, for once, he was doing something meaningful. Early the next morning, Samuel packed a small bag, filling it with the essentials: clothes, a wallet with just a few bills, and a worn-out cap he found in the back of his closet. He stared at himself in the mirror, seeing a man who was both familiar and foreign, a stranger in his own skin. The old clothes hung loosely on his frame, the cap casting a shadow over his eyes. He tousled his hair, letting it fall in an unkempt mess, and took one last look at his reflection. The house was silent as he made his way through the grand entryway, the early morning light casting long shadows on the marble floor. He paused at the door, looking back one last time at the mansion that had been his fortress, his pride. It looked different now, like a memory from another life. With a deep breath, he stepped outside, letting the cool morning air wash over him. He felt a strange sense of liberation, as if he were shedding an old skin and stepping into a new life. The city awaited, vast and unknown, filled with the people he'd spent years overlooking. He walked through the streets, blending into the morning crowds, becoming just another face among the many. The skyscrapers towered above him, casting long shadows that stretched across the sidewalks, and the sounds of the city filled his ears, a symphony of voices, engines, and distant sirens. He felt a thrill of anticipation, a sense that he was on the brink of something profound. As he moved through the bustling streets, he marveled at how invisible he felt. No one looked twice at him. No one paused to wonder who he was or where he'd come from. He was anonymous, free from the weight of his wealth and reputation. And for the first time, he felt the world around him with a clarity that he'd never known. Over the next few days, Samuel adapted to his new life, learning to navigate the streets with a careful awareness. He spent his days in parks, on street corners, watching the world go by. He observed the people around him, noting their faces, their expressions, the way they moved through life with a resilience he hadn't appreciated before. In the mornings, he'd find a bench near a coffee shop, watching as people hurried past on their way to work. He saw mothers with young children, construction workers, students, and tourists, each one caught in their own world, their lives a mystery he could only glimpse from the outside. In the evenings, he wandered through quieter neighborhoods, finding shelter in empty doorways or on park benches. The nights were cold, the city's lights casting eerie shadows across the streets, and he often found himself questioning the wisdom of his plan. But each morning, as he watched the sun rise over the city, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. One afternoon, as he sat on a bench by the waterfront, a young woman approached him, her face kind but weary. She offered him a cup of coffee, her eyes filled with a compassion that warmed him in a way he hadn't expected. They talked briefly, sharing small details about their lives, and as she walked away, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there were people out there who could see beyond appearances, who valued kindness and connection. And so, he continued his search, day by day, blending into the city, becoming a part of its rhythm, its heartbeat. By the fifth morning, Samuel's face was lined with fatigue. The world looked different from his new vantage point. The towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, once symbols of his success, now mere backdrops to a life he'd never imagined for himself. He adjusted his cap, pulled his coat tighter around him, and tried to blend in as he took in the world around him. As he wandered through a quieter part of the city, he noticed a group of people gathered in line outside a small building with chipped paint and a faded sign that read, "Community Meals." Intrigued, he approached, and an older man in line turned to him with a nod. "First time here?" the man asked, his voice gravelly but kind. He wore a threadbare jacket and a look of quiet resilience that Samuel recognized from others he'd met on the streets. Samuel hesitated, nodding slightly. "Yes, it is. What's this place?" The man gave him a sympathetic smile. "It's a soup kitchen. They serve free meals every morning and evening. Good people in there, if you don't mind waiting a bit." The man held out his hand, introducing himself. "I'm Carl." Samuel accepted the handshake, feeling the roughness of Carl's callous fingers. "I'm Sam," he replied, choosing to keep his introduction simple. As they waited together, Carl filled the silence with small talk, sharing stories of his years working on docks, living paycheck to paycheck before an accident had cost him his job and eventually his home. Samuel listened intently, struck by Carl's quiet strength and refusal to complain. By the time they reached the front of the line, Samuel had a new understanding of hardship and a growing respect for those who faced it daily. When his turn came, he accepted a warm bowl of soup and a piece of bread, and he and Carl found a spot at a worn wooden table. They ate in silence at first, the sounds of clinking dishes and murmured conversations filling the air. Samuel felt oddly at peace. The food was simple, but the warmth of the room, the friendly nods from others, and the quiet camaraderie made the experience deeply satisfying. "You got a place to stay tonight?" Carl asked after they'd finished eating. Samuel hesitated, realizing he hadn't thought that far ahead. I'll find somewhere." Carl nodded, understanding in his eyes. "If you ever need a spot, there's a shelter over on 5th and Maple. Not fancy, but it's warm, and they won't turn you away." Samuel thanked him, touched by Carl's kindness. It was a small gesture, But in the context of the life Samuel was now experiencing, it meant everything. In the days that followed, Samuel began to see kindness in places he hadn't expected. There was the young barista at a small coffee shop who, noticing Samuel lingering outside on a rainy afternoon, offered him a cup of coffee on the house. She didn't ask him any questions, just handed him the warm cup with a gentle smile and a "stay warm out there." Then there was the elderly woman at the park who struck up a conversation with him as they sat on a bench, feeding the pigeons. She talked about her late husband, how they'd spent every Saturday feeding the birds together, and how she still came out, hoping he'd somehow feel her presence. She handed Samuel a slice of bread to share with the pigeons, never once questioning his appearance or wondering why he looked so worn and tired. Each small act left a mark on Samuel, revealing a side of humanity he hadn't seen from the high-rise windows of his office. These people had nothing to gain by helping him, and yet they did so with open hearts and simple kindness. It was a revelation, one that began to reshape his understanding of what truly mattered. Yet for all the kindness he encountered, Samuel also faced the harsh reality of isolation. As he walked through the streets each evening, the stares, the hurried glances, and the occasional dismissive scoff reminded him that not everyone saw worth in a man without a suit and tie. One night, as he huddled in the shadows of a doorway, rain pouring down around him, Samuel felt the weight of loneliness pressing down on him. The thrill of his mission, the sense of purpose that had driven him out of his mansion, now seemed distant, almost foolish. In the cold, he felt exposed, vulnerable, and more alone than he ever had before. His thoughts drifted back to his mansion, to the warmth of his study, the comfort of his bed. He thought about calling Marcus, asking him to send someone to bring him back, to rescue him from this life he'd chosen for himself. But he held back, remembering his purpose, his promise to himself to find someone who could carry forward his legacy. As the rain continued to fall, he closed his eyes, grounding himself in the memory of his parents, the quiet wisdom they had instilled in him. He thought of their sacrifices, the way they'd lived their lives with purpose and integrity, even with so little. They had raised him to value people over possessions, and he was finally beginning to understand what that truly meant. With renewed resolve, he pulled his coat tighter around him, determined to press on. One crisp morning, Samuel made his way to a small park he discovered tucked away behind a row of buildings. It was quiet there, and he often saw the same people, an older man with a cane, a mother with her young daughter, and a young artist who set up an easel under the shade of a tree. That morning, as Samuel sat on a bench, the artist approached him. She was in her 20s with bright eyes and paint-streaked fingers. She gave him a small smile, her gaze curious but kind. "Mind if I sketch you?" she asked, holding up her sketch pad. "I'm working on a project about faces, everyday people. I think you'd be perfect." Samuel was taken aback, but nodded, intrigued. He watched as she began to sketch, her pencil moving swiftly across the page. They talked as she worked, and she introduced herself as Emma, an art student who spent her mornings sketching people in the park. As she drew, she asked him about his life, his background, where he'd come from. Samuel kept his answers vague, offering glimpses of his life without revealing too much. He didn't tell her about his wealth or his diagnosis, but he found himself sharing small pieces of his journey, his desire to find meaning beyond material success. Emma listened intently, her gaze thoughtful. "I think it's amazing what you're doing," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "So many people spend their lives chasing success, but you're looking for something real." Samuel felt a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. Emma saw him, not as a homeless man or a stranger, but as a person on a journey, searching for something greater than himself. When she finished the sketch, she handed it to him with a smile. It was a rough drawing, but she'd captured something in his expression, a quiet determination, a sense of resilience he hadn't recognized in himself. "Thank you, Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. This means more than you know." She nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. "Keep going, Sam. You'll find what you're looking for." But as the weeks wore on, doubt began to creep into Samuel's mind. His search was harder than he'd anticipated, and he was beginning to question whether he'd ever find someone worthy of his legacy. He'd met kind people, yes, but they were strangers, people passing through his life with fleeting acts of compassion. None of them had left the kind of lasting impression he was searching for. One evening, as he sat by the waterfront, watching the city lights dance on the water, he wondered if he was looking for something that didn't exist. Perhaps his idea of a perfect heir was nothing more than a fantasy, a dream born from the desperation of a man who had no one left to turn to. The isolation was wearing on him, the cold seeping into his bones, the days blending into each other in a blur of wandering and waiting. He thought about returning to the mansion, abandoning his mission, and letting fate decide what would happen to his fortune. But each time the thought crossed his mind, he remembered his parents, the promise he'd made to himself to find someone worthy. So, he pressed on, each day a test of his patience, his resilience, his belief in the goodness of people. It was on one of these nights, as he sat shivering under a bridge, that he felt a hand on his shoulder. He looked up, startled, to see a young man in his early 20s, dressed in a worn jacket and carrying a backpack. The man's face was rough, his eyes tired, but his expression was gentle. "Are you all right, sir?" the man asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. Samuel nodded, his voice hoarse. "Just getting by." The man sat down beside him, pulling a sandwich from his bag. He offered half to Samuel, who accepted it gratefully, surprised by the stranger's generosity. "My name's Andy," the man said as they ate, his gaze steady and open. "I used to have a place, a job, but things went south. I know what it's like to be out here alone." They talked for a while, sharing stories of hardship, of struggle, of hope. Andy spoke with a quiet strength, a resilience that Samuel recognized from his own journey. By the time they parted ways, Samuel felt a glimmer of hope rekindling within him. Perhaps he thought his search wasn't in vain. Perhaps there were people out there who could see beyond wealth and status, who valued integrity, kindness, and resilience. And perhaps, if he kept searching, he might finally find the heir he was looking for. Samuel's life fell into a new rhythm. Each morning, he would wake in whatever makeshift shelter he had found, a doorway, a park bench, sometimes a small spot under a bridge. He would rise before dawn, stretch his aching limbs, and join the city as it slowly came to life around him. The experience was humbling, grounding him in a reality he had never allowed himself to understand. One morning, as he wandered through the streets, he passed by a bakery just as it was opening. The smell of fresh bread drifted into the air, filling his senses, reminding him of simpler times when his mother would bake bread in their small kitchen, humming softly as the house filled with warmth and comfort. He was lost in the memory when a young woman stepped out, holding a paper bag filled with pastries. Noticing Samuel, she gave him a kind smile and offered him a pastry. "Here," she said gently. "They're warm. Take one." He accepted, gratitude flooding his chest as he bit into the soft, buttery pastry. He thanked her, his voice thick with emotion, and she nodded with a warm smile before disappearing back into the bakery. As he finished his breakfast, he felt a strange sense of hope, realizing that maybe kindness wasn't as rare as he'd once thought. As the weeks wore on, Samuel continued to encounter small acts of compassion that kept his hope alive. There was the young father he met in a community park who offered him a bottle of water and sat with him for a few minutes, sharing stories about his family. Samuel listened as the man talked about his daughter, his voice filled with pride and love. For a brief moment, Samuel felt a pang of regret, realizing he had never known that kind of connection, that pride in family. Then there was the construction worker who, after a long day, shared a cup of coffee with Samuel. They sat together on the steps of a building under renovation, talking quietly about the challenges of life and the importance of resilience. The man had calloused hands and a weary gaze, but he spoke with a gentle wisdom that left Samuel feeling strangely comforted. These interactions, though brief, began to shift Samuel's perspective. He realized that wealth and success had often clouded his ability to see the humanity in others. Now, stripped of his riches, he found himself connecting with people in a way he never had before. He was starting to see the world through their eyes, and the experience left him humbled. But despite these glimpses of kindness, Samuel often felt the sting of rejection. He faced countless instances of people avoiding him, their gazes sliding over him as though he were invisible. The isolation weighed on him, reminding him that he was, after all, just another stranger in a city that had no place for him. One evening, as he sat on a bench, watching the lights of the city twinkle against the night sky, he felt doubts settle heavily over him. His search had yielded glimpses of kindness, but no lasting connection, no person who stood out as the one he could entrust with his legacy. The faces and voices blended together, fleeting and distant, like a dream slipping away upon waking. A part of him longed to return to his former life, to the comfort and certainty he'd once taken for granted. But another part, the part that had driven him out here in the first place, urged him to keep going. He knew his mission was far from over, and he clung to the hope that somewhere, somehow, he would find the person he was looking for. With a renewed sense of determination, he rose from the bench and disappeared into the city, his heart heavy but resolute. The following days brought a harsh reminder of the challenges Samuel now faced. The weather turned bitterly cold, with icy winds slicing through his thin coat. His hands and feet were numb, and his joints ached from nights spent on hard pavement. The city, which had once felt like a vast playground under his control, now loomed large and unfriendly, a place of hardship and survival. During this time, Samuel encountered others who lived on the streets. He met Jack, a former mechanic who'd lost his job and home after an injury, and Mary, an elderly woman with a soft voice and a sad smile, who spent her nights reading books she found in the free libraries around town. They shared food, huddled together for warmth, and talked about the twists and turns that had brought them here. Despite their hardships, each of them showed a resilience that astounded Samuel. They faced their circumstances with dignity, holding on to hope even when life seemed impossibly bleak. Their stories stirred something within him, a sense of kinship that reminded him of the strength his parents had instilled in him. But the nights grew colder, and Samuel's health began to falter. His cough worsened, and he found himself struggling to catch his breath as he walked through the city. He pushed through the pain, driven by his mission, but he knew his time was running out. One night, as he sought shelter under an awning to escape the rain, Samuel heard the sound of footsteps approaching. He looked up to see a group of young men, their laughter loud and mocking as they noticed him huddled against the wall. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "Hey, old man," one of them sneered, stepping closer. "What are you doing out here all alone?" Samuel raised his hands in a gesture of peace, his heart pounding. "Just trying to stay dry," he said, keeping his voice calm. But his words only seemed to amuse them. Another one stepped forward, his face twisted into a grin. "Look at him, trying to act all calm. You think you're tough?" Before Samuel could respond, one of them shoved him, sending him stumbling backward. He caught himself against the wall, his heart racing as he realized the danger he was in. His body, weakened by weeks of hardship and illness, was no match for these young men. They surrounded him, their taunts blending with the sound of rain as they jostled him, each shove more forceful than the last. Samuel tried to keep his balance, his mind racing as he searched for a way to de-escalate the situation. Then, just as one of them raised a hand to strike, a voice cut through the darkness. "Leave him alone!" Samuel looked up, his vision blurred, to see a young boy standing at the edge of the alley, his small frame tense with determination. The boy couldn't have been more than 10, but his voice held a strength that silenced the group. The men hesitated, exchanging glances, and with a few muttered curses, they backed away, disappearing into the night. Samuel sank to the ground, his body trembling as he caught his breath. The boy approached him, his face filled with concern. "Are you okay, mister?" he asked, his voice softening. Samuel nodded, still dazed. Thank you for stepping in." The boy offered him a small smile, his eyes filled with a maturity beyond his years. "No one should be treated like that," he said simply. "I couldn't just stand by." Samuel looked at the boy, a strange feeling stirring within him. Here was someone who, despite his young age, had shown a bravery and compassion that many adults lacked. He felt an inexplicable connection to this child, a sense that perhaps, in some way, fate had led them to cross paths. "What's your name?" Samuel asked, his voice hoarse. "Eli," the boy replied. "I live with my mom over on Maple Street. She works late, so I come here sometimes to wait for her." Samuel nodded, processing this information as he studied Eli's face. There was a kindness in the boy's eyes, a strength that reminded him of his younger self. For the first time since he'd started his journey, he felt a spark of hope, a sense that he might have found someone who could carry on his legacy. "Eli," he said, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. "Thank you. You have no idea how much your kindness means to me." The boy smiled, a warmth in his gaze that filled Samuel with a quiet peace. "It's nothing," he replied. "People should help each other. That's what my mom always says." They sat together for a while, the rain falling softly around them. And as they talked, Samuel felt a connection forming, a bond that went beyond words. In Eli, he saw a glimpse of the future, a possibility he hadn't dared to hope for. And as they parted ways that night, Samuel knew his journey was far from over. But now, he had a new sense of purpose, a renewed determination to find the legacy he'd been searching for. The encounter with Eli filled Samuel with a new resolve. He felt rejuvenated, as if he had been given a second wind, a reminder of why he had embarked on this journey. He began spending more time near the places where he'd met Eli, hoping to see the boy again, to learn more about him and his life. During his search, he met others like Eli, people who, despite their own struggles, were willing to offer a helping hand, a kind word, or a moment of understanding. The city, which had once seemed cold and unfeeling, now revealed itself to him in shades of compassion and resilience. Yet for every act of kindness he encountered, there were reminders of the harsh reality of life on the streets. He saw others like himself, lost and forgotten, navigating a world that seemed to have no place for them. He witnessed moments of pain, of loss, of quiet suffering that left an indelible mark on his heart. Through it all, he clung to the hope that his search would lead him to someone like Eli, a person who saw beyond wealth and status, who valued kindness and integrity above all else. And with each passing day, he felt himself growing closer to the answers he sought, closer to the legacy he longed to leave behind. In the days that followed, Samuel found himself returning to the neighborhood where he'd met Eli, hoping for another encounter. He spent hours in the park near Maple Street, watching the children play, the parents chat, the world moving around him in a rhythm he was only beginning to understand. He began to feel like a part of the city, one thread in a tapestry woven from thousands of lives and stories. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, he saw Eli again. The boy was sitting on a bench by himself, his gaze fixed on the pavement as he kicked a small pebble back and forth with his shoe. He looked pensive, a touch of sadness in his young face that struck Samuel. "Hey, Eli," Samuel called softly, approaching with a tentative smile. Eli looked up, surprise flashing across his face before he broke into a grin. "Sam, I didn't think I'd see you again." Samuel settled beside him, nodding. "Well, I guess I'm a hard man to get rid of," he chuckled, trying to mask the relief he felt at finding the boy again. They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Samuel asked, "How's your mom? You mentioned last time that she works late." Eli shrugged, his gaze dropping. "She's doing her best. She's tired a lot, but she says everything she does is for me." There was a maturity in his tone, a weight that didn't belong to a boy his age. Samuel felt a pang of sympathy. "That sounds like a lot for a young guy like you to handle." Eli looked at him, his expression softening. "It's okay. My mom says we're lucky, even if things are hard sometimes. She's all I have." Samuel nodded, sensing the depth of Eli's love for his mother. Here was a boy who knew the value of family, of loyalty, even in the face of hardship. "She sounds like a strong woman." Eli nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "She is." As they talked, Samuel noticed a flicker of hesitation in Eli's gaze, as though he wanted to say something, but wasn't sure if he should. "Is there something on your mind, Eli?" he asked gently. The boy shifted uncomfortably, glancing around before he spoke. "I was just wondering, are you okay out here? I mean, do you have a home?" Samuel's heart ached at the question, realizing how attuned Eli was to the world around him. "I'm managing," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes we all go through things that make us feel a little lost, but I think I'm finding my way." Eli nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Well, if you ever need help, I don't have much, but my mom and I can share what we have." Samuel felt a surge of gratitude, touched by Eli's offer. "That's very kind of you, Eli. You're a good kid." They talked a while longer, with Samuel learning more about Eli's love for soccer, his favorite books, and his dreams of becoming a teacher someday. The boy's innocence and resilience filled Samuel with a renewed sense of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he had found the kind of person he was looking for. Later that evening, as Samuel walked back through the dimly lit streets, he couldn't stop thinking about Eli's mother. There was a strength in Eli that he sensed came from her, a quiet resilience that reflected a life of sacrifice and love. He wondered what kind of hardship she had endured to give Eli the stability and hope he clearly cherished. The following morning, Samuel decided to visit the community center near Maple Street, a modest building where locals gathered for meals, support, and various resources. He'd heard from others on the streets that it was a safe haven, a place where everyone was welcome regardless of their circumstances. As he entered, he felt the warmth of the place envelop him. The walls were lined with colorful artwork, children's drawings and posters celebrating community values like kindness, empathy, and generosity. In one corner, a group of volunteers was serving hot coffee and sandwiches to a line of people, their smiles genuine and inviting. He noticed a young woman, wearing a simple uniform and an apron, handing out food and chatting with the visitors in line. She had dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, her face tired but kind. She moved with a quiet efficiency, pausing to offer a word of encouragement or a gentle smile to each person who passed her. As she turned, Samuel's breath caught. He recognized her immediately. It was Sarah, his high school sweetheart, the girl he had once dreamed of spending his life with. She looked older now, her features softened by time, but there was no mistaking the strength in her eyes. He felt a whirlwind of emotions: shock, disbelief, a faint glimmer of joy, and a profound sadness at the years that had separated them. He wondered if she would even recognize him, if she still thought about the life they had once envisioned together. When their eyes finally met, she froze, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition. "Samuel," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and vulnerability. "It's me, Sarah." For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the past pressing down on them. Finally, she took a step forward, her gaze filled with a mixture of warmth and hurt. "I can't believe it. After all these years." Samuel managed a small smile, his heart pounding. "I didn't expect to find you here either." She gave a slight nod, her eyes searching his face. "I thought you left town for good. I didn't think I'd ever see you again." They moved to a quieter corner of the center, away from the bustle of activity, and as they talked, Samuel explained the journey that had led him to this point. He told her about his illness, his desire to find someone worthy of his legacy, his choice to leave behind his wealth and walk among those he once overlooked. Sarah listened quietly, her expression softening as he spoke. When he finished, she looked at him with an understanding that went beyond words. "You were always searching for something, Sam," she said softly. "I just didn't realize how far you'd go to find it." Samuel's heart ached at the truth in her words. "I thought I could find happiness and success, in building a life that my parents would be proud of. But now I see that I was missing something I couldn't buy or build." She nodded, her gaze shifting to the people in the room, her expression thoughtful. "Life is a way of teaching us what really matters. I thought I'd lost everything after you left, but I had to be strong for Eli." His chest tightened at the mention of Eli, the boy who had shown him a kindness he hadn't expected. "Sarah, is Eli my son?" She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes. I tried to find you when I found out, but by then, you'd moved, and I didn't know where to look. I raised him on my own with help from friends. He's everything to me, Samuel." For a moment, Samuel was speechless, the weight of her words settling over him like a blanket. He felt a surge of emotions: regret, joy, love, and a fierce protectiveness he hadn't known he was capable of. "I had no idea," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I wish things had been different." Sarah placed a hand on his, her touch warm and steady. "We can't change the past, but Eli is here now, and he deserves to know his father." In the days that followed, Samuel spent as much time as he could with Eli, savoring every moment with the son he hadn't known he had. They played soccer in the park, shared stories over simple meals, and explored the city together. Eli was full of questions, his curiosity boundless, and Samuel found himself sharing stories from his own childhood, moments he hadn't thought of in years. Eli soaked up every word, his eyes bright with admiration. He talked about his favorite books, his dreams of one day becoming a teacher, and the way he wanted to make a difference in the world. Samuel felt his heart swell with pride, realizing that Eli was everything he had hoped to find: kind, compassionate, driven by a desire to do good. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city skyline, Eli turned to him with a question that caught him off guard. "Dad, are you going to leave again?" Samuel felt a pang of guilt, knowing that his journey had been one of detachment, of walking away from the life he had built. But as he looked into Eli's earnest gaze, he knew he couldn't leave again. Not now, not ever. "No, Eli," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "I'm here to stay. I promise." They sat together in silence, the city lights twinkling like stars in the distance. And in that moment, Samuel felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He had found his legacy, not in wealth or power, but in the love of a son he was just beginning to know. Samuel's life took on new meaning as he embraced his role as a father. He spent his days with Eli, supporting Sarah, and volunteering at the community center, finding fulfillment in ways he had never thought possible. He began to share his resources discreetly, using his wealth to help the people he had come to know, supporting the center, and funding programs for families in need. For the first time in his life, he felt truly rich, not in money, but in love, in purpose, and connection. His journey had led him to a place he hadn't expected, but one he was deeply grateful for. As the months passed, Samuel watched Eli grow, his son's resilience and kindness filling him with pride. He knew that he had found his true legacy, a legacy that would live on in the lives he had touched and the love he had found. And in the quiet moments, as he sat with Eli and Sarah, he felt his heart swell with gratitude. He had been given a second chance, a family, and a purpose, and he would spend the rest of his life cherishing every moment. Over the next few months, Samuel threw himself into work at the community center. It became his second home, a place filled with laughter, resilience, and the quiet determination of people striving for a better life. He was no longer the isolated millionaire. He was part of a family, a community that welcomed him with open arms. The center's staff and volunteers didn't know about his wealth, and he liked it that way. One afternoon, as he was sorting donations in the back room, Sarah approached him with a hesitant smile. "Sam, I've noticed how much you've taken to this place. It's like you're building something." Samuel nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. "I suppose I am," he replied thoughtfully. "I want to give back, Sarah. For years, I thought wealth was the answer. But this center, it's given me a purpose I never imagined." They began to discuss ways to expand the center, adding programs that could support families struggling with housing, job training, and healthcare. Sarah shared her dreams of creating a youth mentorship program to help kids like Eli navigate school and life challenges. Samuel listened intently, inspired by her vision, and he realized that this could be the legacy he was searching for, not just for Eli, but for every family in the community. "What if we create a foundation?" Samuel suggested, his mind racing with ideas. "A foundation that can fund projects like this center, but on a larger scale. We could provide scholarships, job training programs, even medical support." Sarah's eyes widened, her face brightening with excitement. "You'd really do that, Sam? You'd make something like that happen?" Samuel felt a surge of determination. "Yes, I want to leave something behind that matters. And with you and Eli by my side, I know we can make a real difference." As they moved forward with their plans, Samuel began quietly funding the center's needs, upgrading its facilities and expanding its services. New computers were installed, a small library was established, and a dedicated team of counselors was hired to support families in crisis. The changes were gradual, and Samuel took care to keep his donations anonymous, blending in as a volunteer instead of a benefactor. The impact was immediate. Parents expressed their gratitude, children flourished with the new resources, and the entire atmosphere of the center became one of optimism and hope. Samuel's heart swelled each time he saw a child smile or watched a parent sigh with relief after receiving support. One day, as Samuel was working with a group of children, he noticed Eli standing in the doorway, watching him with a proud smile. Eli approached, tugging on his father's sleeve. "You're helping everyone, Dad," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Samuel knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Eli, you already are. Your kindness and courage brought me here. Without you, I wouldn't have known what really matters." Eli beamed, and in that moment, Samuel felt the full weight of his purpose settle over him. He had spent his life building wealth, but here, in a modest community center surrounded by people who cared for each other, he'd found true wealth. As the foundation plans progressed, Samuel's health began to deteriorate. The days spent on the streets had taken their toll, and the cold nights had exacerbated his condition. He tried to hide his symptoms from Sarah and Eli, not wanting them to worry, but Sarah noticed the change in his energy, the way he seemed to tire more easily, the pallor in his face. One evening, after a long day at the center, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He tried to ignore it, chalking it up to exhaustion, but the pain intensified, forcing him to sit down, gasping for breath. Sarah, who had been nearby, rushed over, her face filled with alarm. "Sam, what's wrong?" she asked, kneeling beside him. He managed a weak smile, waving her off. "Just a little tired, that's all." But Sarah wasn't convinced. She called an ambulance, and within minutes, Samuel was rushed to the hospital, leaving Eli behind with a worried expression and a promise from his mother that his dad would be okay. At the hospital, Dr. Foster met them with a grave expression. "Sam, I warned you that your condition would get worse without treatment," he said, his tone a mix of concern and frustration. "You put yourself at risk. Your heart can't take much more." Samuel listened quietly, knowing that his friend was right. He had delayed treatment, choosing to dedicate his time and resources to the community instead. But now, faced with the reality of his failing health, he wondered if he'd made the wrong choice. "Marcus," he said softly, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I'm willing to take the risk. I just need enough time to finish what I started." Dr. Foster looked at him, understanding the resolve in his friend's gaze. "Then we'll do what we can. But Sam, you need to understand, there are no guarantees." Samuel nodded, feeling a mix of determination and acceptance. He was prepared to face whatever came, as long as he could spend his remaining days building something that would last. When Samuel returned home, Eli was waiting, his face pale with worry. Sarah had explained that his father needed rest, that he had a heart condition, but Eli was old enough to sense the gravity of the situation. He approached his father, his voice filled with fear and uncertainty. "Dad, are you going to be okay?" he asked, his small hand gripping Samuel's tightly. Samuel knelt down, meeting his son's worried gaze. "I'm going to be here as long as I can, Eli, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure you and your mom are taken care of." Eli's lip trembled, but he held his father's gaze. "You're my hero, Dad. I don't want you to leave." Samuel felt his throat tighten, and he pulled Eli into a hug, holding him close. "I'm not going anywhere just yet, son. We still have a lot to do together. And I promise, no matter what happens, I'll always be with you." They sat in silence, the weight of their love and fears filling the room. For Samuel, this moment crystallized his resolve to build something enduring, something that would carry on even if he wasn't there to see it. After weeks of preparation, the foundation was finally ready to launch. Samuel and Sarah organized an event at the community center, inviting local families, volunteers, and even Dr. Foster, who had become a close supporter. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. and Samuel felt a quiet pride as he looked out over the crowd. As he took the stage, he felt the weight of the moment, the culmination of his journey from wealth and isolation to purpose and connection. He spoke about the foundation's mission, his voice steady as he outlined their goals of supporting families in need, funding educational programs, and providing resources for healthcare. I spent too many years chasing success, thinking that wealth was the measure of a life well lived, he said, his gaze moving over the faces in the crowd. But I've learned that true wealth lies in the people we care for, the lives we touch, and the kindness we share. The crowd erupted into applause, and as Samuel stepped down, he felt Sarah and Eli beside him, their smiles bright with pride. In that moment, he knew that this was the legacy he wanted to leave. Not his company, not his mansion, but a foundation rooted in compassion and love. In the months that followed, the foundation flourished, quickly becoming a beacon of hope for families in the community. Samuel worked tirelessly, his heart full of purpose even as his body weakened. He trained a dedicated team, knowing they would carry on his vision, and he began to make peace with the life he'd lived and the choices he'd made. He spent his days with Eli, teaching him everything he could about kindness, resilience, and the importance of helping others. They would walk through the city together, visiting the families they had helped, sharing moments that Samuel knew would live on in Eli's heart. One evening, as they sat together on a park bench, Eli turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to run the foundation. I want to help people, just like you." Samuel felt a swell of pride, a sense of fulfillment that he'd never known before. "You'll make an incredible leader, Eli, and I'll be with you every step of the way, in spirit." They sat in silence, the sky darkening around them, and Samuel felt a quiet peace settle over him. He had found his purpose, his legacy, and his home. And as he looked at Eli's face, filled with hope and determination, he knew that his journey had been worth every sacrifice. Samuel's health continued to decline, but he faced it with a quiet acceptance, his heart full of gratitude for the life he'd found. He spent his final days surrounded by the people he loved, Sarah, Eli, and the community that had embraced him as one of their own. When he passed away, the foundation held a memorial in his honor, the community coming together to celebrate the life of a man who had transformed their lives. Eli stood before the crowd, his voice strong as he shared memories of his father, stories of their journey together, and his promise to carry on the legacy Samuel had built. And as the sun set over the community center, casting a warm glow over the gathering, Samuel's presence was felt by everyone there, a reminder of the power of love, compassion, and the impact of a life lived with purpose. The foundation continued to grow, expanding its reach and supporting countless families. And through it all, Samuel's memory lived on, a beacon of hope for those who needed it most. For Eli, his father's legacy became a guiding light, a reminder that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the lives touched and the love shared. And as he led the foundation with the same strength and compassion his father had shown, he knew that Samuel's spirit would be with him always, a legacy that would endure for generations. Samuel found himself marveling at Eli's growth each day. Once shy and reserved, Eli now seemed eager to help at the community center, organizing small tasks and befriending children his age who came to the center after school. He had a natural gift for making people feel included, and Samuel could see the compassion his son carried in his heart. One afternoon, as they were helping serve meals, Eli turned to Samuel with a glint of determination in his eye. "Dad, do you think I could help even more? Like, maybe teach something?" Samuel was both surprised and touched by his son's eagerness. "What do you have in mind, Eli?" Eli shrugged, thoughtful. "Maybe I could help the younger kids with their homework, or read to them. I see some of them struggling, and I want them to know they don't have to do it alone." Pride surged through Samuel, and he nodded. "That's a wonderful idea, Eli. I think the younger kids would love it, and you'll make a great mentor." Over the following weeks, Eli started leading an after-school tutoring program, guiding younger children through reading and simple math problems. Samuel watched from afar, his heart swelling with pride as Eli patiently explained math steps or animatedly read storybooks aloud. The children adored him, looking up to him with respect and admiration, and Samuel could see the seeds of a future leader. Eli's confidence grew as well, and he began to realize the power of his own voice and actions. Samuel saw himself in Eli, but knew that his son had something more, an innate warmth and compassion that couldn't be taught, a quality that made people gravitate towards him. Watching Eli flourish gave Samuel a renewed sense of purpose, a feeling that his legacy was already in safe hands. As the foundation grew, so did its demands. Samuel, Sarah, and the team quickly realized that running a foundation involved constant effort and, more pressingly, a need for sustainable funding. The initial donations Samuel had made had been enough to get the foundation off the ground, but as they expanded their programs, the funds began to dwindle. One evening, Samuel and Sarah sat in his study, surrounded by spreadsheets, budgets, and letters from supporters. Sarah looked up, concern etched into her face. "We're doing incredible work, Sam, but we need more funding if we're going to keep up with everything. I don't want to cut any of our programs. These families count on us." Samuel sighed, feeling the weight of his responsibility settling over him. "I know. We need to attract bigger donors, build partnerships with businesses, create an endowment, something to ensure we're stable." Sarah nodded, biting her lip as she scanned the figures again. "You've already given so much, Sam. Maybe we should consider a fundraising event, something that could bring in support from people who believe in what we're doing." The idea resonated with Samuel. He had seen the transformative impact of the foundation firsthand, and he wanted to bring that story to others, people who would understand the value of giving back. "That's a great idea, Sarah. We'll plan something big, something that shows the world what this community has to offer." As they began brainstorming, Samuel felt a spark of excitement. The foundation had become more than a project. It was a lifeline for countless families, and he was determined to see it succeed, no matter the obstacles. With renewed energy, Samuel and Sarah threw themselves into planning the fundraiser. They transformed the community center's largest room into a warm and inviting space, complete with decorations, photos of families helped by the foundation, and testimonials from those who had benefited. The community pitched in, donating food, decorations, and entertainment for the event. Eli helped set up tables and chairs, his excitement palpable as he worked alongside his father and the volunteers. He had taken great pride in the foundation's work and was eager to share his enthusiasm with others. On the night of the fundraiser, the room was filled with supporters, community members, and even a few local business owners who had come to learn more about the foundation's impact. Samuel stood at the front of the room, watching as people mingled, shared stories, and admired the displays of the foundation's work. When it was time to speak, Samuel stepped up to the podium, feeling a mixture of nerves and gratitude. He looked out over the crowd, catching Eli's encouraging smile, and felt a surge of determination. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady. "This foundation started as a simple idea, a desire to give back to a community that welcomed me when I needed it most. What we've built here is more than just a charity. It's a family, a place of hope, and a beacon for those in need." He spoke of his journey, his realization of what truly mattered, and the work the foundation had done to support families, children, and individuals facing hardship. He shared stories of resilience and strength, of people who had found hope and friendship within the foundation's walls. As he finished, there was a moment of silence, followed by a wave of applause. People approached him afterward, expressing their admiration and pledging their support. The fundraiser was a resounding success, and by the end of the night, they had raised enough money to secure the foundation's future for another year. For Samuel, the night marked a turning point. He had built something that would endure beyond him, something that Eli could carry forward, and he felt a profound sense of peace knowing that his work was making a difference. A few days after the fundraiser, Samuel was approached by Carl, the older man he'd met at the soup kitchen during his early days on the streets. Carl had become a familiar face at the foundation, often helping with odd jobs and assisting at events. Samuel had come to respect Carl's humility and resilience, qualities that reminded him of his own parents. "Sam," Carl began, a touch of nervousness in his voice, "I wanted to thank you for all you've done, for me, for everyone here. You've changed lives." Samuel smiled, placing a hand on Carl's shoulder. "I think we've all changed each other's lives, Carl. This foundation wouldn't be what it is without people like you." Carl hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn coin. "This was my father's lucky coin. It got me through some tough times, reminded me to keep going even when things seemed impossible. I want you to have it." Samuel took the coin, feeling its weight in his hand. It was smooth and aged, a symbol of resilience and faith. "Thank you, Carl. This means more to me than you know." Carl nodded, his eyes misty. "Just remember, no matter where you go or what happens, you've made a difference here. That's all any of us can hope for." Samuel pocketed the coin, feeling its reassuring weight. It was a reminder of the journey he had taken, of the lives he had touched, and of the people who had taught him the true meaning of wealth. As Samuel's health continued to decline, he began to worry about the future of the foundation. He wanted to ensure that it would remain strong, that Eli and Sarah would have the resources they needed to carry on his vision. One evening, he called Eli into his study, where he had laid out the foundation's mission statement, the charter, and a few personal letters he had written to inspire his son in the years to come. "Eli," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "I want to talk to you about the foundation. You've seen how it's changed lives, how it's given hope to so many. I need you to understand how important this is to me." Eli nodded, his face solemn. "I do, Dad, and I'll do everything I can to keep it going." Samuel placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You're young, Eli, but you have a heart that understands kindness and the strength to lead. Promise me you'll carry this forward, that you'll help people the way we have here." Eli's eyes filled with tears, and he wrapped his arms around his father. "I promise, Dad. I'll make you proud." Samuel held him close, his heart full of love and pride. He had found his legacy not in wealth, but in the kindness and courage of his son, a boy who had taught him the true meaning of compassion. Samuel spent the following months training a new team of leaders for the foundation, ensuring that they shared his vision and values. He met with potential board members, business partners, and community leaders, securing commitments to continue supporting the foundation in the years to come. He documented every detail, leaving behind clear instructions for Eli and Sarah. He knew he wouldn't always be there to guide them, but he took comfort in knowing they were prepared. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Samuel sat with Sarah and Eli on the porch, watching the colors shift across the sky. He felt a peace he hadn't known in years, a quiet certainty that he had done everything he could to leave a lasting legacy. "Thank you, Sam," Sarah whispered, her hand resting on his. "For everything, for coming back, for giving us hope." He smiled, his heart full. "Thank you, Sarah. You gave me a second chance, a family, and a purpose. I'm grateful for every moment." They sat together in silence, watching the stars appear one by one. For Samuel, it was a perfect ending, a moment of love, gratitude, and fulfillment that he would carry with him forever. As the seasons changed, Samuel's health continued to decline, his energy diminishing with each passing day. He spent more time at home, his moments of strength fewer and farther between. But his resolve was unwavering, and every spare ounce of energy went into preparing Eli and Sarah to lead the foundation. One afternoon, Samuel sat with Eli in his study, going over the foundation's long-term goals. He showed Eli the records he had kept, explaining how each donation had been allocated, how they had structured their programs to support families over the long term. "Eli," Samuel began, his voice calm but serious, "I want you to remember something. The foundation isn't just about money or buildings. It's about people, the lives you'll touch, the hope you'll bring. Those things are what make this work meaningful." Eli nodded, taking in his father's words with a maturity that belied his age. "I understand, Dad. It's not about being rich. It's about being someone who can make a difference." Samuel smiled, pride filling his heart. "Exactly, son. And remember, even when things get hard, you have what it takes to make a real change. The foundation is yours to carry forward, but you'll have help. Lean on those who believe in you." Eli squeezed his father's hand, his young face determined. "I won't let you down, Dad. I'll make you proud." The foundation's impact continued to spread throughout the city, reaching families who had once felt lost and forgotten. The community had come together to support Samuel's vision, each person playing a part in building something greater than themselves. Parents who had found support through the foundation volunteered their time, and local businesses contributed funds and supplies to ensure its continued success. One day, Sarah arranged a small gathering at the community center, inviting everyone who had been impacted by the foundation's work. She wanted to honor Samuel, to let him see firsthand the lives he had changed. As Samuel entered the room, leaning on Sarah for support, he was greeted by warm smiles and grateful faces. Families lined up to greet him. Children held handmade signs with messages like, "Thank you, Mr. Grant," and "You gave us hope." His heart swelled as he looked around, seeing the fruits of his labor reflected in the joy and gratitude of the people he had helped. One mother, a woman named Maria who had struggled to feed her children after her husband's passing, stepped forward, tears shining in her eyes. "Mr. Grant, I don't know if you understand what you've done for us. My kids have food, clothes, and a safe place to grow up, all because of you. I'll never be able to repay you." Samuel took her hand, his own eyes misting. "You don't owe me anything, Maria. Knowing that you and your children have a better life is more than enough." The gathering went on, and each person shared their story of how the foundation had helped them. Samuel felt a deep, abiding sense of peace as he listened, knowing that his efforts had made a tangible difference. This was the legacy he had dreamed of, a legacy of love, compassion, and lasting impact. With his strength fading, Samuel called a meeting of the foundation's board, officially handing over leadership to Sarah and Eli. It was a decision he had made carefully, knowing that they were the heart and soul of the foundation. Sarah's dedication and experience, coupled with Eli's natural leadership, made them the perfect team to carry the vision forward. As they sat around the table, Samuel looked at each board member, feeling a mix of gratitude and trust. "This foundation has always been about more than just my vision," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "It's about our shared commitment to helping others, to building a community where no one is left behind. I have no doubt that, together, you'll make sure this mission continues." The board members, many of whom had become close friends and confidants, nodded in agreement, their expressions somber. They had watched Samuel pour his heart into the foundation, and they were committed to honoring his legacy. Sarah, sitting beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder. "We won't let you down, Sam. The foundation will continue to grow, and we'll make sure it's always a place of hope and support." Samuel nodded, relief washing over him. "I know you will. You've all given me a gift I can never repay, the chance to leave something meaningful behind." The meeting ended with quiet promises and heartfelt goodbyes, and as Samuel left the room, he felt a profound sense of closure. His work was done, and he was leaving the foundation in capable hands. In his final days, Samuel spent as much time as he could with Eli and Sarah, savoring each moment, each conversation. He shared stories from his past, moments of triumph and failure, and lessons he had learned along the way. He wanted Eli to know him, not as a wealthy man or a businessman, but as a father who had found his purpose through love and sacrifice. One evening, as they sat together on the back porch, watching the sunset, Eli asked a question that had been weighing on his heart. "Dad, are you scared?" Samuel looked at his son, a gentle smile on his face. "A little maybe, but mostly I'm grateful. I had a second chance to live a life that mattered, to build something beautiful with you and your mom. That's more than I ever hoped for." Eli nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. "I'm going to miss you, Dad, but I promise I'll make the foundation everything you wanted it to be." Samuel wrapped his arm around Eli's shoulders, pulling him close. "I know you will. You're strong, Eli, and you'll never be alone. You have a whole community behind you, people who love you and believe in you." They sat in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky bathed in hues of orange and pink. For Samuel, it was a perfect moment, a final gift of peace and connection with the people he loved most. Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep a few days later, surrounded by Sarah, Eli, and close friends from the foundation. His passing was met with an outpouring of grief from the community, each person touched by the loss of a man who had given so much of himself. A memorial service was held at the community center, where hundreds gathered to celebrate Samuel's life and legacy. People shared stories of his kindness, his generosity, and his unwavering commitment to helping others. They spoke of the lives he had changed, the hope he had inspired, and the legacy he had left behind. Eli stood at the podium, his young face etched with grief, but filled with determination. He spoke of his father's journey, of the lessons he had learned, and of the promise he had made to carry on his father's work. "My dad taught me that true wealth isn't measured in money or success," Eli said, his voice steady. "It's measured in the lives we touch, in the love we share, and in the hope we bring to others. He may be gone, but his legacy will live on through each of us." The crowd listened in silence, their hearts full of gratitude and respect for the man who had given them so much. As Eli finished, they rose in applause, their collective tribute to Samuel Grant, a man who had transformed not only his own life, but the lives of countless others. In the months following Samuel's passing, Eli and Sarah dedicated themselves to the foundation with a renewed sense of purpose. They expanded their programs, reaching more families, offering scholarships, job training, and medical support to those in need. The community center became a beacon of hope, a place where anyone could find support, friendship, and guidance. Eli grew into a natural leader, his compassion and resilience inspiring those around him. He held his father's values close, guiding the foundation with integrity and a deep commitment to service. The people of the community looked up to him, seeing in him the same strength and kindness that had defined his father. Sarah, too, found healing in her work. She poured her heart into the foundation, ensuring that Samuel's vision remained true to his intentions. Together, she and Eli became the heart of the foundation, a mother-son team united by love, purpose, and the legacy Samuel had left them. Years passed, and the foundation flourished, its reach extending beyond the local community to cities across the country. Samuel's story became a source of inspiration, a reminder that true wealth is found not in possessions, but in the love and support we give to others. The foundation funded scholarships for students from underprivileged backgrounds, built affordable housing for families in need, and established medical clinics in underserved areas. Eli led the foundation with compassion, always honoring his father's memory, and Sarah worked tirelessly by his side, her heart filled with pride for the legacy they had built. One day, as Eli stood in front of a crowd at the opening of a new community center in a neighboring city, he felt his father's presence beside him. He smiled, knowing that Samuel's legacy was alive and well, thriving in the lives of every person the foundation had touched. With a deep breath, he addressed the crowd, his voice strong and clear. "My father believed that everyone deserves a chance, that no one should be left behind. This foundation is his legacy, but it's also a promise to carry his values forward, to bring hope to those who need it most." The crowd erupted into applause, their appreciation echoing through the air. For Eli, it was a moment of fulfillment, a testament to the love, resilience, and dedication his father had instilled in him. And as he looked out over the crowd, he knew that Samuel's spirit would always be with him, guiding him, inspiring him, and reminding him of the true meaning of wealth. In the end, Samuel Grant's legacy wasn't just a foundation. It was a living testament to the power of love, compassion, and the enduring impact of a life lived with purpose. And for Eli, it was a gift he would carry forward, a legacy he would honor for the rest of his life. Under Eli's leadership, the foundation began to reach beyond the boundaries of their hometown, connecting with other communities in need. He and Sarah traveled to cities and rural areas alike, partnering with local organizations to expand the foundation's reach and bring hope to struggling families. Each visit reinforced the foundation's mission, reminding Eli of the responsibility he had inherited and the importance of continuing his father's work. One day, while visiting a small town that had been devastated by job losses and economic hardship, Eli met a single mother named Lisa. She had 3 young children and was barely making ends meet. Through the foundation, they helped her secure job training, childcare support, and food assistance. The gratitude in Lisa's eyes struck a chord in Eli, reminding him of his father's words. It's about people, the lives you'll touch, the hope you'll bring. As he left the town that day, Eli felt a renewed commitment to the work they were doing, knowing that every person helped was a step forward in honoring his father's legacy. The foundation began developing programs focused on self-sufficiency, offering scholarships, career counseling, and health education. Eli initiated a mentorship program where older teens and young adults could receive guidance from mentors who had overcome similar struggles. His personal involvement became an inspiration to many, encouraging young people to pursue education, follow their passions, and give back to their communities. As the foundation grew, Eli found himself spending more time on the road, speaking at conferences, meeting with donors, and working to secure lasting partnerships. During one of these events, he met an inspiring young philanthropist named Emma, who ran a youth empowerment organization focused on mental health. Emma was passionate about her work, having experienced firsthand the challenges of growing up without support. The two quickly bonded over their shared values and goals, and Emma became a close friend and trusted ally. Her energy and vision reinvigorated Eli, and together they envisioned a new partnership to address mental health, which had often been overlooked in communities with limited resources. They worked tirelessly to create a joint initiative that would provide counseling services, community workshops, and crisis support, ensuring that mental health was treated with the same urgency and compassion as other basic needs. With Emma's expertise and the Foundation's resources, they launched the program, bringing much-needed services to countless families. For Eli, the collaboration marked a new chapter in the Foundation's growth, expanding its impact and showing him that building a legacy was not a solo journey. He felt a deep sense of pride, not only in the work they were doing, but also in the connections he was forging, connections rooted in compassion and the shared goal of creating lasting change. However, with growth came new challenges. The Foundation's rapid expansion required more resources than anticipated, and Eli soon found himself facing financial difficulties. Balancing new initiatives with maintaining their established programs became a complex task, one that required constant fundraising and careful budgeting. Eli sometimes felt the weight of his father's legacy pressed down on him, the responsibility overwhelming. There were days when he questioned his decisions, moments when he wondered if he was living up to Samuel's vision. One evening, as he was preparing for a board meeting, Sarah found him in the office, staring at the budget with a troubled expression. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Your father would be proud of you, Eli. You're doing everything he dreamed of, and more." Eli looked up, his face softened by her words. "I just don't want to let him down, Mom. This foundation is everything to me, and I want to make sure it has a future." Sarah nodded, her gaze filled with understanding. "You've already honored his memory, Eli. The foundation is alive and thriving because of you. Don't let setbacks make you doubt yourself. You have a whole community behind you, and they believe in you just as much as he did." With her encouragement, Eli found the strength to keep going, reaching out to new donors, speaking at events, and finding innovative ways to secure funding. His perseverance paid off, and the foundation regained its footing, a testament to his resilience and the support of those who believed in him. As the anniversary of Samuel's passing approached, Eli and Sarah organized a memorial event to honor his memory and celebrate the Foundation's accomplishments. They invited friends, family, supporters, and community members to the center, creating an evening filled with laughter, music, and reflections on Samuel's life. At the event, Eli spoke from the heart, sharing the journey he had taken since his father's passing. He talked about the lessons Samuel had instilled in him, the strength he had found in his father's example, and the joy of seeing the foundation flourish. "Everything we do here, every family we help, every life we touch, it's all because of my father's belief in the power of love and compassion," Eli said, his voice steady and clear. "He taught me that the greatest legacy we can leave is one that lifts others, that inspires hope and kindness. And tonight, we honor him by continuing that legacy together." The The crowd erupted in applause, many wiping away tears. Eli looked out at the sea of faces, feeling a profound sense of connection and pride. In that moment, he felt his father's presence, a quiet reassurance that he was on the right path, that he was exactly where he was meant to be. As the years passed, Eli continued to lead the foundation, but he began to think about the future, about who would carry the torch after him. He recognized the importance of empowering others to take on leadership roles, knowing that a lasting legacy required a strong team dedicated to the mission. He worked with the board to establish a mentorship program within the foundation, encouraging young people to step into leadership positions. He partnered with universities and community organizations to create internship opportunities, giving young leaders a chance to gain experience and develop skills. Eli took a special interest in a young man named Jordan, a recent college graduate who had overcome significant challenges growing up. Jordan was passionate, driven, and shared Eli's dedication to helping others. Under Eli's guidance, Jordan grew into a confident leader, taking on more responsibility and eventually joining the board. The mentorship program became one of the foundation's most successful initiatives, producing leaders who were not only capable, but also deeply committed to the foundation's mission. Through their work, Samuel's legacy continued to evolve, touching the lives of future generations and ensuring that his values would live on. For Eli, watching young leaders like Jordan rise through the ranks brought him a deep sense of fulfillment. He saw the future of the foundation in their hands, knowing they would carry forward the mission with the same love and dedication that had guided his father. By the time Eli was in his 40s, the foundation had grown into a nationwide organization, with programs in dozens of cities and a reputation for creating lasting change. What had begun as Samuel's dream had become a powerful force for good, transforming communities and changing lives. Eli often visited the original community center, walking through the halls, watching the children play, and remembering the early days with his father. The center had been expanded, with new classrooms, a health clinic, and a counseling wing added to serve even more families. It was a place filled with life, a testament to Samuel's vision and Eli's dedication. One day, as Eli was leaving the center, a young woman approached him, carrying a small child on her hip. She smiled shyly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Mr. Grant, I just wanted to thank you. The foundation helped me through some really hard times. I don't know where I'd be without it." Eli smiled warmly, his heart swelling with pride. "It's our pleasure to help. My father believed that everyone deserves a chance, and we're just carrying on his work." As he watched her walk away, Eli felt a profound sense of peace. He knew his father's legacy was in good hands, that the work they had done together would endure. Samuel's dream had been realized, and the foundation would continue to grow, fueled by the love and compassion he had instilled in his family and community. In the end, the legacy of Samuel Grant was not measured in buildings or programs alone, but in the lives he had touched, the hope he had inspired, and the love he had fostered. His memory lived on through Eli, through Sarah, through every family that had been lifted by the foundation's support. Eli, now a seasoned leader, looked back on his father's journey with gratitude. He understood that Samuel's gift to him had been more than an inheritance or a foundation. It had been a way of life, a way of seeing the world that valued compassion, integrity, and service above all else. And as Eli continued his work, he carried his father's spirit with him, a constant reminder that true wealth was not found in material possessions, but in the love, kindness, and legacy one left behind. As the years passed, Eli found himself at the helm of a powerful, nationwide foundation. What had started as a local initiative had blossomed into a movement that spanned across cities, states, and even regions. His leadership had expanded the foundation's work, and he had helped establish new projects aimed at not just alleviating immediate needs, but providing long-term solutions for education, healthcare, and mental health. Yet, with this growth came new challenges. Managing such a large organization required Eli to balance day-to-day operations, financial sustainability, and the foundation's core values. He often found himself in board meetings discussing budgets and strategies with business leaders, while his heart and soul remained with the families the foundation served. One evening, as he reviewed proposals for a new educational scholarship program, Eli felt a familiar pang of uncertainty. The stakes were higher now, and the pressure to live up to his father's legacy weighed heavily on him. Would Samuel have been proud of the direction the foundation was heading? Was he making the right decisions? It was in these moments of self-doubt that Eli remembered his father's advice, spoken on their last evening together. True wealth lies in what you give away, Eli, and in the lives you touch along the way. Those words echoed in Eli's mind as he looked out his office window. He knew he was on the right path, and each decision, no matter how difficult, was a step toward continuing his father's dream. One day, the foundation faced an unexpected crisis. A major donor, whose financial support had funded some of the foundation's key programs, suddenly withdrew their contribution. The news hit the foundation hard, and Eli found himself scrambling to secure alternative funding sources. Eli gathered his team to discuss the situation, their faces filled with concern. Sarah, still working alongside him, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Eli, we've been through tough times before. We'll find a way. We always do. While Sarah's words brought him comfort, Eli knew that the stakes had never been higher. Without this funding, several critical projects would have to be paused or even shut down. Eli spent the next several days meeting with potential donors, expanding the foundation's outreach efforts and reaching out to longtime supporters. He was reminded of how fragile any endeavor could be, no matter how established. But the foundation's success had always been about more than money. It had been about people, relationships, and the shared belief in a better future. Despite the setback, Eli refused to give up. He worked tirelessly, negotiating with businesses, individuals, and organizations to secure new funding. Slowly but surely, he managed to put together a new financial plan, one that would keep their most vital programs running. During this time, Eli realized that the true power of the foundation wasn't just in its ability to provide services. It was in the stories of transformation and hope that came from the people it helped. These stories weren't just about financial assistance. They were about lives being changed through education, mentorship, and support. Eli decided to showcase these stories more publicly, creating a new initiative that would amplify the voices of those who had benefited from the foundation. He invited several people, families, individuals, and children, to share their stories in a new media campaign. It was important for him to remind the community of what the foundation stood for and the real, tangible impact it had on people's lives. The first story featured Maria, the woman who had once thanked Samuel for helping her and her children all those years ago. She now worked as a volunteer at the center, mentoring others who were facing similar challenges. Her journey from dependence to empowerment was powerful, and it resonated deeply with those who watched. The campaign caught the attention of many people across the country, reinvigorating support for the foundation. It wasn't just about asking for donations. It was about building a community of people who cared, who understood the importance of investing in others. As the new donations poured in, Eli was overwhelmed with gratitude. It was a reminder that when people connected with the stories of others, they were far more likely to support causes with their time and money. With the financial setback behind them, Eli focused on expanding the foundation's roots. He knew that to make a lasting impact, they needed to build sustainability into their programs. He began focusing on training community leaders in areas where the foundation operated, ensuring that local leaders would continue to advocate for the needs of their communities. Eli knew that the true power of the foundation wasn't just in what they could provide, but in empowering others to do the same. The more local leaders they trained, the more self-sufficient the programs would become. It was a vision that Samuel had always believed in, helping people help themselves. In one of their largest projects yet, Eli launched a pilot program that trained young adults in underserved areas to be community organizers. The program taught leadership skills, event planning, and how to mobilize resources for community development. The goal was to create a network of young leaders who could sustain the foundation's work for years to come. The first cohort of graduates from the program went on to work for the foundation, taking on roles as mentors, event organizers, and coordinators. Their passion and drive inspired the next generation, and Eli felt that, in some way, His father's dream was beginning to truly take shape. One winter evening, as Eli walked into the community center, he was greeted by a familiar face. It was Carl, the man who had helped him during his early days volunteering and who had supported the foundation through thick and thin. Carl, now older but still strong, had come to thank Eli for all the foundation had done for him. He had been a volunteer for several years, but now Carl had a new mission of his own. He had been using the skills he learned at the foundation to help launch a similar program in another state, helping people in rural communities access mental health services and job opportunities. Eli, Carl said with a grin, I just wanted to thank you. The foundation changed my life, but more importantly, it's helping me change the lives of others. I never thought I could have such an impact, but you showed me how to give back. Now, I'm passing it on. Eli, deeply moved by Carl's words, clasped his hand in gratitude. Carl, you're the one who's truly making a difference. I'm just trying to live up to the legacy my father started. Carl shook his head. No, Eli. You've taken that legacy and turned it into something even bigger. Your father would be proud. Carl's words were a reminder of how far the foundation had come and how many lives had been touched. It wasn't just about Samuel anymore. It was about the community that had rallied behind the mission, about the people who were taking it to new heights. As Eli continued to grow in his leadership role, Sarah had begun to take on a more advisory position, offering guidance and wisdom as the foundation expanded. While Eli had always been at the forefront of operations, Sarah had played a pivotal role behind the scenes, offering steady leadership, compassion, and a strong moral compass. One quiet evening, Sarah and Eli sat together in their living room, looking over some recent plans for new community centers the foundation hoped to open in the next few years. I never thought we'd be here, Sarah said softly. The foundation has grown so much, and you've carried Samuel's vision forward in ways I couldn't have imagined. Eli smiled and placed a hand on her arm. I had great teachers, he said, his voice filled with gratitude. I had you and Dad to show me how to be a leader, how to put people first. It's a legacy built on love, Mom. You taught me that. Sarah smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. And you're making it your own, Eli. You're carrying it forward in ways I never could have dreamed. Eli's heart swelled with pride and emotion. He knew the foundation was more than just a family business. It was a living, breathing entity that had been built on the hard work and dedication of everyone involved. He understood now that it wasn't his alone to carry. The foundation was a collective dream, one that would continue to evolve and grow long after he was gone. Years later, as Eli stood in front of a group of young volunteers at the grand opening of a new community center in a neighboring city, he reflected on everything the foundation had become. The walls were filled with bright murals created by local children, and the sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air. He smiled at the young faces in front of him, knowing that they would be the future of the foundation, carrying the mission forward, helping families, building hope. Samuel's dream had become something far greater than anyone had ever imagined, a vision that would continue to inspire for generations. As the ceremony ended, Eli stood at the podium and spoke. This foundation was started by my father, Samuel Grant, who believed in the power of. As the foundation continued to grow, Eli organized an annual event known as the Legacy of Resilience Gala. It was an opportunity for the foundation to honor the individuals and families whose lives had been transformed through their support, as well as the volunteers and donors who made the foundation's work possible. The event became a beloved tradition, with people traveling from all over the country to celebrate and share stories of hope. This year, Eli wanted the gala to highlight the stories of resilience he had encountered over the years. He invited Carl to share his journey, along with several other community leaders who had once been recipients of the foundation's help and were now giving back in their own ways. As each person took the stage, they spoke of challenges overcome, dreams fulfilled, and the strength they had found through the foundation's support. Carl's voice trembled with emotion as he described his early days, struggling to survive, and the lifeline that the foundation had thrown him. Samuel Grant didn't just save my life, Carl said, his voice filled with gratitude. He showed me that I had value, that I had something to give to the world. And today I stand here because of his legacy. I'm proud to be a part of this community, to give back and help others find their own strength." Eli watched, his heart swelling with pride. As he looked around the room, filled with familiar faces and new friends, he felt the profound impact of his father's vision. The foundation had become a family, a network of people bound by shared values and the belief in the power of compassion. That evening, as the event ended, Eli took the stage, addressing the crowd with a sense of gratitude that ran deep. This foundation was built on a simple idea that every life has value, that no one should be left behind. My father believed in that with all his heart, and tonight, I see his dream alive in each of you. Thank you for being part of this journey, for carrying his legacy forward. Together, we'll continue to make a difference, one life at a time. The applause that filled the room was thunderous, a testament to the lives that had been changed by Samuel's vision and Eli's dedication to carrying it forward. One quiet afternoon, Eli was working in his office at the foundation's headquarters when he received an unexpected visitor, a young woman named Anna, who had just completed the foundation's community leadership program. She was eager to share her gratitude, but she also came with an idea she had been developing. "Mr. Grant," Anna began, her voice steady but filled with excitement, "I can't thank you enough for what the foundation has done for me. It's given me a sense of purpose, a belief that I can make a difference. And I have an idea I'd like to share." Eli smiled, gesturing for her to continue. Over the years, he had come to value the fresh perspectives and ideas brought by young leaders like Anna. "I want to start a program specifically for youth in transitional housing," Anna explained. "There are so many young people who feel lost, without guidance or a sense of direction. I think we can help them build skills, find jobs, and create a community of support." Eli listened intently, moved by her passion. He saw a reflection of his father's values in her, a desire to lift others, to give hope to those who needed it most. After a thoughtful pause, he nodded. "Anna, I think that's a brilliant idea. Let's work together to make it happen." They spent the afternoon discussing the logistics, brainstorming potential partnerships, and outlining a vision for the program. By the time Anna left, Eli felt energized, inspired by her dedication and the knowledge that Samuel's legacy was living on through new ideas and initiatives. In the following months, Anna's youth mentorship program, known as the Path Forward, became one of the foundation's most successful initiatives. It offered mentorship, job training, and scholarships, reaching young adults who had aged out of foster care or were experiencing homelessness. The program quickly became a lifeline for hundreds of youth, providing them with a sense of purpose and the skills needed to thrive. Eli watched with pride as Anna took the lead, overseeing the program with a dedication that reminded him of his own journey. He often visited the program's events, talking with the young people who were being mentored, listening to their stories, and sharing insights from his father's teachings. One day, a young man named Joshua approached Eli after a workshop. "Mr. Grant, I just wanted to say thank you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I didn't think anyone cared about people like me. But this program, it's changed my life. I'm working now, saving for college. For the first time, I have a plan." Eli felt a swell of pride, and he placed a hand on Joshua's shoulder. "You have so much to offer, Joshua. Never forget that. My father taught me that everyone has value, and you're proving that every day. Keep going. You're going to do amazing things." Joshua nodded, his eyes shining with determination. As Eli watched him walk away, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the foundation was in good hands, that it would continue to grow and evolve as long as there were people like Anna and Joshua to carry the mission forward. Years later, as Eli approached retirement, he found himself looking back on his journey with a deep sense of fulfillment. The foundation had become a testament to his father's vision, a living legacy that had transformed countless lives and empowered communities across the country. One autumn afternoon, he visited the original community center where it had all begun. The walls were now filled with photos, plaques, and letters from those whose lives had been touched by the foundation. There was even a section dedicated to Samuel, with framed photographs and a plaque that read, "In memory of Samuel Grant, whose kindness and vision inspired a legacy of hope." Eli stood in silence, absorbing the gravity of what they had accomplished. He thought of his father, of the promise he had made to carry on his work, and he felt a profound sense of peace. The foundation was more than just a charity. It was a testament to the power of love, compassion, and resilience. As he looked at the smiling faces in the photos, Eli knew that his father's spirit was alive in every person who had been helped, in every volunteer who gave their time, and in every young leader who carried the mission forward. Samuel's dream had become a reality, and Eli had fulfilled his promise, ensuring that his father's legacy would endure for generations. On the day of Eli's retirement, the foundation hosted a gathering to honor his decades of dedication. Friends, family, staff, and community members filled the auditorium, eager to celebrate the man who had led the foundation through so many years of growth and change. As Eli took the stage, the audience erupted in applause, their appreciation a testament to the lives he had touched. Eli spoke from the heart, sharing stories of the people he had met, the challenges they had overcome together, and the lessons he had learned. This foundation is more than just a building, more than just a program, Eli said, his voice filled with emotion. It's a legacy built on kindness, compassion, and the belief that everyone deserves a chance. My father taught me that true wealth is found not in what we own, but in what we give away. And today, I pass that lesson on to each of you. He looked into the crowd, his gaze settling on Anna, now a senior leader within the foundation, and on Joshua, who had recently joined the board. They were part of the next generation, the new custodians of the legacy Samuel had started so many years ago. As the ceremony ended, Eli felt a sense of closure. He knew that he was leaving the foundation in good hands, that the mission would continue to thrive and evolve, carried forward by those who believed in it with all their hearts. In the years that followed, the foundation continued to grow, expanding into new communities, launching new programs, and reaching people who had once felt invisible. Eli remained involved as an advisor, offering guidance and support when needed, but he was content to watch from the sidelines as others took the lead. One evening, as he walked through a quiet park near his home, he looked up at the stars, thinking of his father. Samuel's legacy had become a beacon of hope, an enduring reminder of the power of love and compassion. Eli knew that he had fulfilled his promise, that his father's dream had become a reality. And as he watched the stars shine brightly against the night sky, he felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that Samuel's legacy would live on, not only in the foundation, but in the lives of everyone who had been touched by its work. It was a legacy that would continue to ripple outward, carried forward by those who believed in the values that Samuel had instilled in them all. "Thank you, Dad," Eli whispered, his voice soft but filled with gratitude. "Your legacy will live forever." And with that, he walked on, his heart light, his spirit full, knowing that Samuel Grant's legacy would continue to touch lives, inspire hope, and change the world for generations to come. If this story touched your heart and you'd love to hear more inspiring tales of resilience, kindness, and the power of legacy, be sure to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know when new stories like the legacy of Samuel Grant are uploaded. We're here to bring you narratives that uplift, inspire, and remind us all of what truly matters. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. We appreciate every one of you joining us on this journey. Let's keep building a community that believes in the strength of compassion and the impact of a life well lived.